feel like you have any trust issues? You know what I mean? Do you feel like you have difficulty trusting people? Of course you do. Who wouldn't have difficulty trusting people? But why is that? Why do we all have difficulty trusting people? I don't know. Maybe it's because you grew up with an older brother or sister. Yep, or maybe it's because you grew up with a dad like this. I would so do that. Or maybe it's because you had a friend like this. You want to give somebody trust issues, just send them this card in the mail. I honestly do think that in one way or another, we all have experiences in our lives that have caused us to have some trust issues. I mean, we've all felt betrayed by friends. We've all had family members not follow through with their promises. We've all been stabbed in the back or lied to the front. We've all been let down time and time again by the actions of people around us. In some way or another, we all grown to have these trust issues based upon experience. Sometimes there are very good reasons why we have these issues. The sad thing is that those events which have caused us to lose our faith in our fellow man, they've also wreaked havoc on our relationship with God. What do you mean? Well, think about it just for a second. Don't you find yourself in life walking around a little bit guarded? Don't you find yourself making sure not to be too honest or too vulnerable, lest somebody hurts you by breaking your trust yet again? I mean, that's how we live our lives. And due to our inability to ever fully trust our fellow man, we don't really understand what we're supposed to do or what it's supposed to look like in our lives when God says to trust in him. Today's scripture is one of my favorites. It's one that I often find myself quoting. It comes from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. What exactly does that mean, though, to trust in the Lord with all of your heart? Well, think of someone in your life who you trust the most. Who is the person in your life who you trust the most? Maybe it's your mom or your dad. Maybe it's one of your kids. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's a friend. Who do you trust in your life more than anyone else on the face of the planet? Now let me ask you, this person that you trust more than anyone else, do you trust them with 100% of your heart? I mean, are you 100% sure that they will never do something to hurt, offend, betray, bend, or break your confidence in them? I will tell you that that person for me is my wife. And Terry, I know, would say the same thing about me. But does she really trust me 100%? Absolutely not. And probably for good reason. What do you mean for good reason? Well, for example, I remember it was a couple years ago, before we had any kids. So it was like at least 20 years ago. Man, I'm getting old. Okay, so it was a couple decades ago, and Terry and I lived in East Brady on East 2nd Street, right across from St. Eusebius Church, and it's right up on the hillside. And our yard for East Brady was the biggest and best sled riding yard that the whole town has. Kids would come from all over town to sled ride in our yard because it had a really great setup. You had the main road, which was level, and then our yard butted right up against that. And then our yard would have a 15-foot drop off of that, just a really sharp ramp going straight down into our yard, which was still a hill because we live in East Brady. So what you would do is you would set your sled up on the road, and then you'd keep scooching yourself forwards until you were far enough that you went over this drop off, which propelled you with some great speed all the way down 50 yards to the bottom of our yard. Well, one day, Terry and I and my sister and her husband and some other people were out sled riding. And Terry laid down on the sled with her face pointing down the hill, and she started to scooch herself forwards towards the edge, getting ready to go down and over. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny? Honestly, why do all of my stories that end badly start with me thinking, wouldn't it be funny? Anyway, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I ran up and surprised her by jumping on her back, and then I shot the two of us down the hill, both on her sled? Sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So I backed up, I took a running start, I dove onto her back, throwing both of us over the bank and speeding straight down into the yard. This would have been a great plan and worked out perfectly if I hadn't accidentally jumped on her with slightly too much force. Because when I landed on her, I kind of knocked her forwards and halfway off of the sled. In addition to knocking her halfway off the sled, I also slid too far forwards and landed with most of my weight on her head. So now she's got her lower half on the sled, but her upper half is on the snow, and I am with all of my weight leaning down on her head. So I'm guessing you can envision where this is going. We make it over the crest of that hill and then start to fly down through the yard with her lower half still on the sled, but her upper half directly on the snow and me directly on her head, pushing her face into the ground. And we took off like a bullet. And we started down the hill at a pretty good pace. It definitely was not the funny situation that I had pictured in my mind. Because I hadn't pictured me riding her face downhill like it was my own tiny little sled. So we are flying down this hill and her face is being ground into the snow. I mean, seriously, all of my weight at this point in time is pushing down on her head. And I can hear this muffled yet angry yell, "Get off of me!" And I realized that I was in trouble. But the speed and the momentum would not let me do anything until the ride came to a complete stop. Luckily or unluckily, her face kind of acted like a brake to slow us down and made us come to a halt before we made it the whole way to the bottom. You know how they say in life that when you are about to die, everything slows down for a moment? Yeah, I believe that to be true because I swear it took 5 minutes to make it down that hill. When we finally came to a stop, I was able to finally push off her head and roll to the side. And when I rolled off, she stood up, and she looked like a cross between Frosty the Snowman and Satan himself. She had snow covering her entire face except for some random parts, and those parts that weren't covered were bright red. And I don't know if that was from ice burn or from anger. Yeah. That's just one of the many stories of why I feel like Terry can't trust me completely. I mean, would you fully and completely trust me if I had a whole lot of moments that started off I thought it would be funny with? No. And this is what happens to us in life. This is why we do not fully and completely trust the people whom we even trust the most. That's because, honestly, either physically or emotionally, they have done stuff to us in the past that they are likely to repeat in the future. And this lack of trust that we have, this lack of complete trust, carries over with us into God. Why do we not trust the Lord our God with all of our hearts? Frankly, I'm not even convinced we know how to do it, because nobody else on earth deserves that kind of trust. So we have no experience with it. So when we do try to trust God, we do it in the only way that we actually know how. We put the same trust into God that we put into people. You see, the word in English for trust means a confident expectation of something. A confident expectation of something. And what is that trust that we put in God? What are we confidently expecting? Well, we're trusting and expecting that he's going to fix whatever is broken in our lives. That he's going to make right whatever has gone wrong. You see, when we say that we trust in God, what we're really saying is that we are trusting God to make our problems go away. But that's not actually what the author of this proverb is trying to help us get out of it. King Solomon wrote this proverb, but when he used the word trust, he meant something different because he wrote it in Hebrew. And when you look at the Hebrew, the word for trust is batah. Batah. Trust in the Hebrew means to put your weight on. It means to fully rest on. Have you ever had one of those long days that just seemed like it didn't want to end? A day that was nonstop from start to finish, and you were just so looking forward to getting it home so you could just fall into your bed. And when you finally fell into your bed, you felt it just wrap around you. And at that moment in time, you could feel all the frustrations and the stress of that day just kind of pour off of you and melt away. And you left out that one big sigh. And you truly relaxed. That's batah. That's what trust in God is supposed to look and feel like. This is what it's supposed to look and feel like.
Hey Google, stop music.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? What are you doing?
We're having spa day.
Spa day, okay. Alright, enough of this nonsense. Let's go, Chase. Come on.
He doesn't want to go with you.
Let's go, Chase.
Leave him
Come
here.
on. Ugh, fine.
Hey Google, play.
Oh, yes, a spa day with the cat. That is batah. That is trust. That is the trust that God is looking for and the refuge that he offers to you. God says, trust in me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It doesn't say, trust in me and I will take away your problems. It doesn't say, trust in me and nothing will ever go wrong. It says, if you are worried and exhausted, trust in me and I will give you rest. See, trusting in God isn't a belief that he will work everything out. Instead, it is the complete relaxation and the calming of your spirit that comes in knowing that your Father in heaven is in complete control of your life. Trusting as God is laying back into that bed and allowing him to take all of the weight off of your feet, because his love will be more than enough to sustain you, whatever it is you find yourself facing. And resting in this knowledge that he will never leave you or abandon you. It's being calm because whatever it is you're facing, God knew about this problem before you were even born, and he's got a plan for it. Maybe not a plan to get you out of it painlessly, but a plan nonetheless. A spiritual plan that will result in the good of you or the good of others. And that's why it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, because this is a heart issue, not a head issue. This isn't about you figuring things out. This is about instead you saying, no matter what happens, I'm okay, because my Father in heaven is with me. And when you take it out of the head, when you stop worrying about what you're going to do, when you stop trying to plan out A, B, C, and D, when you stop running scenario after scenario in your mind and you just trust God that it's going to be okay, something crazy happens. Something happens that the world cannot understand. It says in Philippians 4:7 that when we have batah, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You see, when you have Betah, you also will have peace. Peace in the midst of the storm. Peace in the midst of the trial. Peace in the midst of the uncertainty. You will have peace. A peace that defies logic. A peace that transcends all understanding. You ever experienced that? Back in 2016, I had open heart surgery. I needed to have my aortic valve replaced because of a heart defect that I was born with. This meant that I was having one of the two main heart valves, which provides blood to the entire body, replaced with a mechanical one. In order to fix this valve, they had to stop my heart from beating and put me on a entire blood and lung bypass machine. Knowing that your heart will be shut down for a couple of hours, that can be a pretty scary thing. And the world knows that this is a very intimidating surgery. Leah was 8 at the time, and she made me a card at school, which was the best card I've ever received. There was a little picture of 2 hearts on it, and inside those hearts was a cute little sentence. It said, "I hope you don't die." Kids are awesome, aren't they? Yeah, they get right to the point. There's no need to sugarcoat. And I told her, "Aw, thanks, baby. I hope I don't die too." And I hung it on the wall. You know, during that time, people who knew me, they knew that the anticipation of that surgery would be overwhelming. But you know what? It wasn't. Ask my wife. I wasn't terrified. I wasn't afraid. I had a peace that transcends all understanding. And it came directly from my Betah in my Father. See, I knew that God would see this through. And if I died, which I was confident that was not what God had planned, but if I did, you know what? That'd be okay too. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. It's not loss, folks. It's gain. Philippians 1:21. And that's really what we need to understand. Romans 8:31 says, if God is for us, who can be against us? We spend our entire lives refusing to fall into God's arms, refusing to trust him. And why? The worst that the world can do to us is kill us. And even if that happens, guess what? We still make out like champs. We are victorious. This world is not our home. It is just a warm-up for the real party. And when you start to understand that nothing in this world can actually hurt you, when you realize that God has your whole life planned out ahead of you, when you realize that you don't have to be able to see the whole road ahead to know that it's going to be okay, when you begin to comprehend that even if the worst happens and you die, even that is a victory, then and only then can you truly trust him and lean on him and have peace that the world just doesn't understand. Stop worrying. Stop obsessing. Stop doubting. And just Betah. Just trust. Lay back on that bed. Breathe a great big sigh, knowing that God has it all under control. Betah in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care. God bless. Hope to see you soon.